Yeah, it's up to me to introduce Maya as our first speaker. So as you know, the legislation moved from, let's say, the legislative part now to the implementation part. And Maya Matthews' department at the DG Santé, the Department of Performance of Health Systems, is now in charge of getting this one rightly implemented. I think that's a big task ahead, and we wish her all the best for this task. And I think she's probably the best informed person now on where this whole thing stands and how this will evolve over the next time. Maya Matthews, from the background, she studied in Oxford in the UK and worked a long time now at the European Commission and also on behalf of the European Commission in Geneva in various functions. So Maya, thanks a lot for coming, and the floor is yours. It should be up, just the next presentation, and you can either move here or move there.
Okay, I'll do that.
And just stand in front of the micro, I guess.
Okay. Very good. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be here in Utrecht. It's my first time here, and I was very impressed by the bustle, and you could tell that it was a very lively and vibrant student town. I would like to thank Wim very much for the wonderful welcome in the beautiful University Town Hall last night. And of course, a big thank you to Jörg for inviting me. I'm very excited to be here. It's lovely to be in an academic environment. As a bureaucrat, sometimes I do miss the kind of academic rigor. And so I'm actually here to learn from you. I feel that I'm probably one of the newcomers to this. So I hope that I can inject some new blood, some new energy, but I'm also very aware that there's many, many people here with a lot of experience. So I'm also hoping to learn from you how we can now, as Jörg says, really accelerate the final phase to a very good and smooth implementation period. So even though you're all experts, I think it's always good to go a little bit back to the basics. So I'll start with just recalling where we are now with this new regulation. I think it was very useful to hear from Wim how the progress was achieved over years and years of voluntary collaboration, with the end result that we managed to adopt an EU regulation on health technology assessment cooperation, which in my view is already a huge achievement, because as you know, health systems is very much under the member states, and obviously health technology assessment is very linked to the sustainability of health systems, which is why, because I want to answer this question for those of you who follow the EU bubble, when the health technology assessment file moved to my department, people were wondering, why is it in the health systems department? You know, it should be with pharma, it should be with medical devices where it was before. But here, my Director General and all of us felt that it was very important to show that health technology assessment is a tool. It's not something in itself. It's a tool to help member states in looking at the sustainability of their health systems. It's a tool to help patients and other stakeholders around health systems. So that's why I think it's also showing a little bit of a mind shift that we're really trying to use, we want to use this, we want the member states to use the outcomes, the joint works of this regulation to really help them in their policy and decision making. So the regulation was adopted on the 15th of December, 2021. It came into force on the 11th of January, 2022. And now we're in this kind of very building phase, let's say, to have everything up and running so that on the 12th of January, 2025, we can start and, you know, we can start with a good team, all member states on board, all stakeholders on board, and to start the joint working, which is what the actual regulation is all about. Again, the main objectives, just to recall, it's really to establish a support framework, and this has never been done before. We're doing something at a regional level. We're bringing 27 countries who have their own health systems, all very different, to come together to agree on these joint reports. So I, for one, am very privileged to have been given the honor to lead this work in the Commission, but I hope that all of you, and there's some of you from the coordination group or will be soon the subgroups, I hope you also feel this huge excitement, because we really are, this is a groundbreaking regulation, and we're really doing something. We're pioneers, if you like, in doing something. We're working on the basis of all the voluntary work and cooperation and collaboration under the UNETA joint actions and UNETA 21, and the very important work that we do together with the European Medicines Agency. I'm very happy that Michael is here, and I can say that in our team we work very closely. We're talking non-stop with Emma to try to find ways of how we can collaborate, how we can streamline our procedures. The main thing is we do not want to start creating a huge new monster. What we need to do, and I think we're in a period where all member states are suffering after the pandemic. We all have resource constraints. So another part of this is that we need to be smart in the way we're going to implement this regulation. We need to find ways to work together. We need to be pragmatic. And so these are all issues that we will be discussing together with the member states. This is a member state-driven regulation. And therefore, it's key that the member states are, driving this with the Commission, with important other partners, such as the European Medicines Agency, the Medical Devices Coordination Group, and of course, the stakeholders. And I'll get onto that. But here again, just to recall what we're doing, we're focusing on the blue area, we're focusing on the clinical domains. The non-clinical domains are still for the member states. But there is so much to be done under the clinical domains. As you said about the science, there is still so much work to be done. We hope that all of the researchers out there, all the people also online, especially the young researchers, this is really an area where you can have a huge amount of work, but also we need your research results. We need you to get involved in this area, because as we said, we're now in a situation where there are lots of new substances coming on the market, and we really need to find good ways of being able to assess them. So let's now just look at the joint activities, the main point. And here I want to start by saying that the principles under the joint activities, and this is something that was very much a focus of the negotiations, that they have to be of high quality. We're looking for high quality. We're not looking for the lowest common denominator, because some member states who have very strong HTA agencies themselves, they need to be reassured that the work that comes out of this regulation is of high quality. It's driven by the HTA bodies, and there's already a lot of, as we've said, many years of cooperation. But the difference now is that we're bringing everyone together. We're bringing 27 member states together. And I can tell you that from what we're seeing in the Commission Secretariat is that all member states are actively involved. We have all member states on board. What's also new in this joint activities, or again, a very strong principle, is the active input from experts and from stakeholders. And the other thing is that there will be a progressive implementation. Doing something like this at such a large scale, we can't do everything all at once. And so there's a progressive implementation. And this is where we have that we will start with oncology, new active substances for oncology medicines and ATMPs. And then after 3 years, we will start with orphan medicinal products. And then in 2030, it will be all new medicines. So that's the progressive approach. The same for medical devices. We are starting with a very small selection of the high-risk medical devices. I know that joint clinical consultations is also a very important issue, and here again we will be doing that for HTA in parallel with the European Medicines Agency and their work on joint scientific consultations. Again, this is then changing a little bit the landscape. So there's a lot of new areas, there's a lot of new kind of modes of discussion that need to be addressed. We also think it's very important to look at the horizon scanning so that we can be better prepared, and that as well is something that we'll be doing jointly. And finally, of course, the methodology, because we already have a very, very good basis with all the work from UNETA and UNETA 21. But given that this is now within an EU framework, that we're working with 27 member states, we will need to look at the methodological areas of how to do this. So these are all some of the things that we need to do in the next year and a half. And this is quite a busy slide. I hope you can see it, but this is in one slide showing a little bit about what this new house will look like. So first of all, we have the Member State Coordination Group. This is the main group that will oversee and agree and adopt a lot of the guidance, a lot of the work, will approve the reports that will be the joint work that will be coming out. So every member state is in the coordination group. And the first meeting was in June last year. And then in November last year, the member states elected a chair and 2 co-chairs. And the chair is Rosine from Ireland, and the co-chairs are from Italy, from the Agenis agency, and Niklas from TLV in Sweden. And so we work very closely with them. They're the ones that agree the agenda. They're the ones that chair the meeting. The Commission is the secretariat for the coordination group. We provide, all of the papers. We organize things. We invite the different members. And now the next, let's say, floor of the governance structure is setting up the 4 subgroups, which mirror the joint work that I had in the last slide. And so actually the joint subgroups will be meeting next week, Monday and Tuesday, and they will be electing their chair and co-chair. So this is all, again, we're developing this system, we're creating the governance structure. Then you see along the side, apart from that, the stakeholders network is also a very important part of the governance. So we opened a call for applications to create a new HTA stakeholders network. I can say we were overwhelmed with the applications. My former colleague told me, oh, there's a group of stakeholders who work on HTA. You won't get more than 30 applications. We got over 75. So that's kept my team quite busy. Obviously, we have some eligibility criteria. I think I've got that on the next page. Yeah. So we are still assessing the applications. I would say that one of the main areas is that, this is at the EU level. So we are really looking at organizations that can operate with more than one member state who, so that's one of the criteria that we are looking at. And we actually got quite a lot of applications from national organizations, and so they won't be eligible. But we hope to finish our selection procedure by the end of April, and then you will receive, the applicants will receive the information with the first meeting planned in June. Another important part, again, of building this house is the HTA IT platform. And so that's being done within the Commission. It's a complicated venture because of as I showed you, the governance structure is complicated, so we need to mirror that with an HTA platform that also has these robust different access points for different groups. And as I'm sure you're all aware at the moment, cybersecurity is a huge issue. In the Commission, we are constantly, we have whole departments who are just fending off cyber attacks. And so we need to make sure that this IT platform is fit for purpose, that it is very secure because it will be transferring confidential data. And so we're working with an in-house team to develop that. We also have, because as I said, this whole project can only be successful if all member states are engaged and active in it. So we've created a users group from the member states. We have 11 member states engaged with it, with their IT experts to really check, because for us, this IT platform is going to be the main mode of communication and exchange of information. So we have to make sure that this is a platform that everyone feels comfortable using. So That's a bit the governance. Then we have some legislation, which it's called secondary legislation in our jargon. And so we have to now also, within the Commission, adopt this secondary legislation before the application period. And this is all stipulated in the regulation. But just to give you an idea, for example, the Medicinal Products Implementing Act, it's called. It really looks, it's Article 15, for those of you who want to follow closely with the regulation, but it's really putting in place the structures and processes for exchanging information, for example, with EMA, how to interact with the different actors, some of the timelines. But there's very much a shared approach here, because these implementing acts will itemize certain parts of how the information is exchanged, the timing, who does what, when, and the rest of the guidance, the procedures, will be adopted by the coordination group. So it's a very complex way of putting this together, but I guess that also reflects the long years of negotiations, and again, for all the parties to feel comfortable in going forward. So we have identified 6 implementing acts that we will need to adopt before 2025. This will be using the normal EU decision-making process. We will start with medicinal products, because obviously we are further advanced with that. We have clearer ideas about that. But at the same time, we need to also adopt the different means of exchange of information, etc., with the medical devices. And then finally, I wanted to also share with you that all of this is happening. I've told you about the governance, I've told you about the legislation, but we also have we are also supporting projects to improve and to help us with the implementation. And I'm just going to I realize I'm running out of time, so I'll be very quick here, but I think it's quite useful for those of you who are here. So obviously the UNETA 21 is the key project at the moment that we have. It's a service contract where and Marcus is here, and Anne as well, who are doing an incredible job to try to look at the regulation and all of the different parts of the puzzle that we need to know about. And so they're producing over 70 reports that then we will be able to use as a basis for creating this EU framework. Under the EU for Health program, we also have several projects, and one I want to specifically mention is we will be running information and awareness days across Europe. We're doing this in a regional, we thought to do it under regional way. So the first one will be on the 11th of May in Stockholm. And the idea is that we will have just Nordic countries. So this is again going from the EU bubble to the national level. We will be inviting, it's up to we're doing this in close collaboration with the heads of HTA group organization, because we feel that the HTA agencies, they know best who their constituents are, who they need to involve in this process. So we're hoping that we will invite all kinds of different stakeholders, from patients' organizations, clinical, academia, industry, to come to these groups. It's a half-day session where we will give a short presentation about the regulation, but then also answer questions about how this affects you at the national level. So we hope to roll out about 6 or 7 of these over the next 2 years. Then the Horizon Europe, as you all know, it's the research and innovation funding body for the European Commission, and there's recently been a call for proposals to look at methodology research. So that has just closed, and we're really looking forward to that, because we hope that that will help us a lot in building this framework. And then finally, we have something called a technical support instrument, which is really for member states to help them, to support them in different reforms. And recently, one member state has actually asked for money through this technical support instrument to develop their HTA system adapted to the HTA regulation. So I thought that was just useful to share that information with you. This is just kind of grouping it then. This is where we are at the moment, halfway through. So this is just giving you a kind of one-shot glimpse of what we're doing. I think I've actually spoken to most of this. I've explained it all, so we can go through this quickly, but also just showing how the UNETA and the service contract feeds into drafting the guidance and the procedures that the coordination group will have to do. So for how can you keep up to date? So one of the things that we're doing is we have a rolling plan, which we will update usually once a quarter. And it's just been updated on the 4th of April. So I invite you to go to the EU website, and you will be able to see where we are. It gives quite a clear indication of all of these different areas, where the meetings are, etc. And then finally, my conclusions to share with you. So we are creating a new system. It's groundbreaking. I think that we need to always remind ourselves why we're doing this and what we're bringing to the table. And we're bringing to the table an inclusive approach. We're bringing transparency. So it's not just within the member states, that all the interested parties will be able to see through this IT platform. And what do we need for this? We need the commitment of all stakeholders, because we can't do this alone. We can't do this just member states. We need the industry. We need the patients' organizations. So I hope that the governance structure that I've shown you will help to facilitate that. And as Jörg reminded us, we have less than 2 years to do this, so we have a lot of hard work, a lot of learning to do, and that's why I'm delighted to be here, and I look forward to spending the rest of the day with you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Maya, for this great presentation. Perhaps you can still stay there for a couple of minutes. We thought after this presentation to open up for a couple of initial questions, perhaps the other panelists having the prime slot to ask the question, and then open up to everybody. And from 11 to 12, just for everybody to know, we have a full panel where we may ask any other questions that are coming up also for the other panelists. But for Maya, if there are any questions in the room, let us know. We have the micros, and you may ask. Ansgar, you have
Thank you, Maya. My name is Ansgar Hebborn. I represent FPA, an industry association here. I think we really appreciate the effort with a limited amount of resources that you put into this to ensure that we are ready in time for an ambitious process that we certainly have ahead of us. I think for most companies, and this will be a constant theme, we seek more clarity on the process, and we will constantly want to have more information about what's expected, when, how will this work. You mentioned the implementing acts. I think they are very clear deliverables coming out of the regulation and the legislative process. But there are many other things that will only be developed through the coordination group itself. There will be guidance, there will be many aspects of the joint clinical assessments, for example, that will be not part of an implementing act, but part of other things. And how can there be more clarity around these important deliverables, operating procedures that the coordination group is developing?
Maya.
To answer now, yeah. No, thank you for that question. So I think, as I said, I think that the next week, I think, will be key. So the subgroups will meet, because a lot of them, I should just explain that the coordination group members and the subgroup members are not necessarily the same people. So there'll be a first discussion on the work plan within each of the subgroups, and then, I mean, we report on, we report on the minutes of these meetings. But I think, as I said, that we first have to get the people in the room. And so that's what we're doing next week. And then there will be quite a busy schedule of meetings, because everyone's aware that these are things that can be done. So all I can say is that we're aware of everything that needs to be done, and we will be doing them as we can. But as I said, we've got a very good basis for starting with the work of UNETA. So we're not starting from scratch. But I think we need to recognize that the dynamic has changed, that there are now 27 in the room, and with very different views, very different levels of expertise, very different needs. So we need to, and that's the beauty of the EU policymaking. So you want something simple, but you often need a lot of complexity beforehand.
Christian?
First question is for Jörg. I'm not part of the panel, so may I ask the question nevertheless? I'm Christian Dirks from Dirks & Company, Berlin. Maya, maybe I've missed out on that. We do see that UNETA 21 is developing all these deliverables right now. And at the same time, the Commission is working on the implementing acts. Isn't there a risk of contradiction or inconsistencies? And what is the process of aligning these separate strings?
Thank you for the question. So UNETA 21 is a service contract under the EU for Health the health program. We work closely with UNETA, and the implementing acts, we are looking at all of the deliverables. So the implementing acts and the deliverables, UNETA, I should say, UNETA 21 will finish in September. So a lot of the deliverables are already available. And so we will definitely be taking into account the deliverables that we get from UNETA. But as I said, a lot of the implementing acts are very much on the kind of process. And I think the content work, it will be more, the guidance that Ansgar was talking about, that will be more for the coordination group. And so once UNETA finishes in September, then all of these deliverables will be taken into account as part of the preparatory documentation for the different subgroups and the coordination group to consider.
Yes, hi. I'm Gilles Vassal, the pediatric oncology from the European Society of Pediatric Oncology. I would like just to highlight the importance in the regulation and in the implementation, as you said, of the stakeholders from the professionals and the parents. I think it's absolutely key for the success of this regulation to raise awareness and educate our community. Over the last year, most of the people ignore what it is. And we want this to be a success. We really need to have them educated. So thank you very much for organizing this regional awareness. And us, on our side, we will try really to inform our community how important it is, because they are part of all the program ahead. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for that. I mean, we actually did a call for proposals for patients' organizations for training on the regulation, and clinical associations. And unfortunately, we didn't get any applications for the clinical associations. So I think that shows even more. We probably should have done a bit more work beforehand to raise even the awareness that there was an application. But exactly as you were saying, we're going to hope in these regional awareness raising events that we will really focus on trying to get the clinicians on board. And thank you for offering to also raise awareness in your members.
If I may say, this is exactly also one of the reasons to be of this initiative here, because we want this inclusive stakeholder involvement with medical societies, patients, and so on, being a key stakeholder in this process and being heard and being involved. Any other questions in the room, also from the people online? If there is any question, you might type it in, let us know, and we can raise it over here. We are good in time. We can take one or two more questions. Yes, François.
Yeah, thank you. I'm François Meyer from France, formerly at the French HTA body and now a consultant in public health. Just a question, you mentioned that the implementing acts are setting the frame, and that all the details of the procedures will come from the coordination group. Could you be just a bit more specific with an example or whatsoever, what can be, because it's a bit difficult to imagine what is the part coming from the implementing act and what is the part coming from the coordinating group. That would be from the coordinating subgroups mainly, I guess, with the validation from the coordination group after that. But to have an idea of the amount of work that will still be to be done, and what is the division of work between these two parts of the process.
Yeah. So, for example, I mean, it's a lot of what we're taking, we're not making this up. This is all in the regulation. And so, for example, in the implementing act, as I said, we have to stipulate like how we exchange information with EMA. Like, you know, when the market authorization, when they're notified, what is the process involved? Then what do we do? Then who do we send it to? It's very kind of like it's almost like a kind of a timeline. One of the things that the coordination group has to do is to do the guidance about how the assessor and co-assessor is selected. So I've looked in the regulation and there is not too much, it's just stipulated there that sometimes it says the coordination group will adopt this and sometimes it says it will be done through the Commission implementing acts. So I don't know, I wouldn't say that there's, I can't say that there basically, the way we've interpreted it is that the implementing acts are much more about the kind of process, and the coordination group will do much more about the guidance around the different procedures that are needed. So more in depth, maybe more about the content of that's why I gave that example about how to choose the assessors. The implementing act won't say that. The implementing act will just say, then the information is given to the assessors by the coordination group, and so it's more like the method, maybe, that's one way of explaining it, but the coordination group, because again, it's the HTA bodies, they're more used to doing this kind of work, they're given those kind of tasks to do. But it's a lot of work, and there's a lot of work, but at the same time, UNETA 21, because we went through the regulation, we were able to identify the work that the coordination group had to do, but there are gaps. There are some areas where UNETA 21 doesn't cover, and the coordination group has to really start from scratch. And I personally don't think that's a bad thing, because I think it'll really make everyone work and realize that there's a lot of work to be done, but at the same time that they can create this together.
Michael?
Yeah, Michael Ermisch from German GKV Spitzenverband. I would like to take the chance to ask one clarifying detail question, because it's puzzling us from the beginning and we've had different information, the staggered approach to coming into force. Since orphan medicinal products and ATMPs, orphan medicinal products and oncology drugs are not distinctive categories, mixed oncology products that are approved as orphan medicinal products, are they in the package from the beginning or are they in the package later on? We've heard that they're in there from the beginning because you only know after the approval when the COMP has made its decision whether it's an orphan medicinal product or not. But honestly, this didn't explain everything, because this will only delay the problem, because it's also true for non-oncology products that you only know afterwards whether it's an orphan medicinal product or not. So what is the real plan, having you here?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. And that's exactly, as I said, why we're discussing so carefully with EMA, because the starting point will come with the notification, right, with the application. So these are the kind of things that we're actually looking at with EMA very closely, because it's a staggered approach. We will only receive some of the applications. And so this is exactly the kind of thing that we're discussing at the moment with EMA, and what the filter will be, which products they will send to us that fulfill this category. So I'm sorry, I can't answer that at the moment, but we're aware of these kind of issues, and I hope that we will be able to have a bit more clarity later on down the line, before 2025. Okay.
One more question?
Yeah, one more question.
Bernhard Liebenhoff, Germany, from the Bundesverband der Arzneimittelhersteller. I have one question to the work of the subgroups and coordination group and the stakeholder involvement in this case. Will there be public consultations on the results, for example, on the guidelines of these groups?
So at the moment, the only public consultation as such will be on the implementing acts. So all of the implementing acts, there will be a public consultation. And then this is, again, part of what we're doing in the implementing acts. So you will be able to, I guess, de facto look at that, will be where the stakeholders are involved, when, which stakeholders, because the regulation does make a distinction between the stakeholders network and then individual expert patients and clinicians. So that's quite important distinction to make. So we've got the network, the stakeholder network, which we'll be hopefully meeting with. We will agree terms of reference with them, but then there will also be individual experts that will be consulted on the different joint work. So yeah, that's
Okay, that means there's no chance for industry to give comments on the guidelines?
that we will have to discuss with the coordination group. The coordination group would have to make that decision.
Okay, thank you.
Let's give Maya a warm applause.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us the day, and now I hand over to the next session.